pin. Make sure I got the right Cynthia. No, did I get the wrong? Is there more than one Cynthia? Oh, I pinned the wrong one. Hold on, I'll unpin that one. Remove, because I see you there, so I'll get you here. Add pin. There she is, looking all lovely.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, Cynthia, I know, I just have to quickly, before we even get into it, I know you said you were leaving your family for the whole day, so you were not going to be interrupted by your cute little kids running into the background.
Yes, I changed my plans actually, because as you can hear, I got super sick.
Oh,
and
no.
Yeah. And I thought to myself, like, I'm going to make this a super awesome planning day. I'm going to go out in the countryside where there's like snow falling and it's going to be all magical. And I'm going to film all the videos for my new course. And then I'm going to jump on at 6 and do the summit. And then I'm going to get back off and then I'm going to plan. And then here comes this terrible cold. I have not had a voice until today. I was like sweating, like, oh man. So I just went ahead and I stayed home and it just kicked the family out. So I'm like, you're just not allowed to be here. Just go somewhere.
Yes, I love it. Like, I don't know, last time we talked, Cynthia had her cute little, okay, what ages are your kids again? 9 and 6?
Yes, Max is 9, Ava's 6. You met Ava, yes. Naked Ava.
So Ava was continuously peeking in and running in, and it reminded me, do you guys remember when everything shut down? And there was some funny videos of people trying to have business meetings. And then there was that one where the kid runs in and the wife like tries to creep in and pull the kid back out. It was like it was like, oh, that's, that is exactly, this is real life. We're at home doing Zoom. Our kids are going to be there.
And that video went viral because it wasn't just a regular old Zoom conference, like between colleagues. It was like a CNN interview or something. And then here comes the baby and like the rolly thing. It was like so funny.
It was so cute. Oh, but your daughter was adorable. I mean, I know as you're speaking, it's like you don't want to have distractions. So that makes sense that you told them all to leave.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, let me introduce you because we're right a minute away. So let's get going. So Cynthia, we have a very similar, I think we connected because we have marriage stories that, definitely had the stories of redemption, right? And how the brokenness can become something so beautiful. And that is your marriage story, really. But let me tell a little bit about you. So you are an American living in Germany.
Yes.
I was saying you're going to have to tell how that happened with your 2 kiddos, 9 and 6. You're the founder of the Blue Letter Project, which is a beautiful, everybody's I'm going to send the links in the email to find everybody because I just love what you do. It's an initiative to bring mindfulness back to marriages, and man, you're doing amazing work with that. So you're a marriage and self-fulfillment coach. You help couples become unstuck, rewriting their love stories, discovering their sense of identity. I think it's super cool that you are trained as a professional translator and writer. Yes. So that's where that helps, because now you bring that passion for languages into speaking and teaching on the love languages, which is the love languages is, I mean, everybody should know that. I feel like it was a thing for a few, how many years ago that whole thing came out, but like many people don't know about that anymore, the love languages and how that can serve and how that works. And anyways, that's Cynthia in a nutshell. But Cynthia, you're going to introduce yourself and tell us how you ended up in Germany. And we're going to get into your beautiful redemption marriage story too.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So love brought me to
you're
Germany.
Cutting out.
Thank you so much for having me. So love brought me to Germany.
Hold on. Can everyone hear her? Because I am not hearing you. Oh, now maybe it's back. Can you guys hear? Okay. Let's take 2. Cut. Take 2.
Is the audio okay?
I think so now. Yeah.
Because I've got a big echo on my side, but do you all have an echo? No. Okay.
No. Okay.
Going to be coughing a lot during the interview. Sorry about that. Yes. How did I get to Germany? So yes, I'm trained as a professional translator. I was living in Paris. I'm actually a French translator. and was living in Paris, and my husband just showed up one day in a cafe where I was, and was looking super cute, and we exchanged looks, and eventually had the nerve to talk to each other, and it turned into this unbelievably cheesy romance, like straight out of Hollywood movies. He was supposed to go back home to Germany the next day, and instead he sent his friend home alone and stayed with me for 4 days in Paris. And we just did everything the cheesiest you can imagine, like drinking wine under the Eiffel Tower, walking along the Seine, like dining by candlelight, like and it just turned into this beautiful long distance romance. And after 4 years, eventually moved to Germany, and we just started building our life together. So I guess you just want me to get into how things crashed and burned.
Well, okay, first of all, that sounds like the Hallmark movie scene, like exchange the look, and then he's puts all his plans on hold to be with. Come on, that's like so beautiful and adorable and cheesy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, there is the side where I'm passionate, which is why we want to lead into that for you, is there's so much that happens behind closed doors in marriages, that there's so much shame attached when your marriage isn't doing well, or you struggle with intimacy, or and it needs to be spoken about more to release people to also be able to share. And I know you're as you are now into all of this, you see people come to you that are like, I just, probably they only share one-on-one with you some stuff. And it's like, there's such a stigma that like, you can share about a lot of things, but if your marriage is struggling, which is why I love that you are willing to share. You share your story, you share your journey, and now, as we talked about with the last lovely Ajire, turning around and serving with it. So let's get into your beautiful.
That's absolutely where my passion has grown for this, or where sort of a light bulb went off in my mind, is because after we went through our breakdown, which I'm going to explain in a minute, people, word kind of gets out, and people, in our community and in our like more extended community started to learn about what we had gone through, and that we had quote made it, and we hadn't just made it, but that we were happy. And so people started to contact me over and over again, not just on behalf of themselves and their own marriage, but on behalf of friends or family, or hey, can you talk to my sister, or hey, a coworker is struggling, like, would you mind, And so I started having these one-on-ones with people, which was just so fun for me. I just really, really enjoyed it. And the thing that kept coming up was that everybody's story is the same. Like, there's little tiny details that vary between the different stories, but everybody's stories are the same. And people will open up to you one-on-one and say, this is what's going on in my home. This is what's going on behind closed doors. I'm struggling so much. But no one will come out in the open and share that this is also normal, and that it's, that a marriage is an ebb and flow, and that there's good times and bad times. And that's the point, is that you come together usually when you're very, very young and you're very immature and you have no experience whatsoever in what it means to love together, and what it means to raise children together, to go through struggles together. And so you're growing together throughout your life. And so of course there's going to be ebbs and flows, and there's going to be tough times and good times. And we hear that in our vows, but I think when we enter into marriage, no one expects that.
No. You don't. So you cannot predict.
No, definitely not. And you think like, well, our story is the exception. This is going to be smooth sailing for us because our love is so strong. And that was absolutely the case with my husband and I. I mean, we had this, not only did we have this extraordinary fairy tale beginning, but we really had a super strong love. Like we survived 4 years of a long distance relationship where everybody told us, like, I would have given up so long ago. And we just knew that we were, that we belonged together. And so we sort of beat all the odds, and we came together, and then we thought, okay, let's build this awesome life together. This is going to be so great. And then, you start to build the life together, and then you get your jobs, and then maybe you have some financial struggles, and then kid number one enters the story. When babies enter the story, everything gets shuffled up. and then you buy
Yeah.
the house and you've got the mortgage, and then you've got baby number 2 coming in. And it's like all of these things, whether they're beautiful additions to your life and you wished for them and you want them and you would never give them up. They're like little weeds moving into your marriage. And like over time, you're creating this like field of weediness and just mess. Like it's just a mess because no one knows how to stay connected, through the sleepless nights. No one knows how to stay intimate when you've got babies pulling at your breasts all the time and there's no money and it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And so that was our story. And my husband, one of the things that I absolutely admire most about him, it's probably my favorite quality about him, is that he can identify his feelings very quickly and he expresses them. And he never lies to me. Like he's brutally transparent. He tells me what's on his heart. And so he had been telling me for 2 years, I'm deeply unhappy in this marriage. All we're doing is like ticking off these boxes. You've made all of the plans for our life and I've never had a say in it, which was true. It was very bossy. I had these like fixed ideas about what our life was supposed to look like by this time. And so he told me for 2 years, like, I'm so unhappy. Like, I miss you. There's no connection. We don't have any hobbies together anymore. We don't have anything to talk about. And I never took him seriously. And I just didn't hear him. I mean, I heard what he was saying, but I really didn't hear him on a deep level. And my heart just grew colder and harder over the years, and I was just so, as a mother, I think, any of us that are mothers can completely identify with this. It's like you have this laser focus. It's like you have this lion prowess instinct that kicks in when your babies enter the world. And you have this instinct of laser focus of like, this is what I'm doing and this is how it's going to be. And it's like you lose all emotion. And that's what happened to me. And so, after 2 years of him telling me, I miss us and, what is happening to us, and me not taking that seriously whatsoever, then he just came home one day and sat down at the kitchen table and said, I've decided to leave you. And so, so that was our breakdown moment. And that woke me up. Are you surprised?
Well, I mean, I think that's, if for 2 years because how you said, like, you just kind of shut down and just like, was it almost like in that robotic, like, this is my job right now. I can't see anything other than that. I can't hear you. I don't really care.
It was two things. It was not believing him and thinking, this is just our life right now. And then not caring. Yeah, honestly, not caring, because just being so overwhelmed emotionally. And so I remember actually telling my mother one time when we were home visiting, I feel like I'm sinking. And I remember her saying, like, what do you mean you're sinking? And it just felt like, I don't know. But sometimes you have this enormous field full of weeds and you just have to take a weed whacker and just like, whack through the weeds and just like brutally, like, just cut everything down. And that's what happened to us. Like, I've heard so many stories since then of people who, they have a moment like this and then their ego automatically kicks in, which is normal. Our ego is there to keep us safe. And so their ego automatically kicks in and it's, well, how dare you? And we took these vows and, you promised me this. And then it just turns into a complete and total breakdown. And then it's, get out and no accountability for the kids or anything. And it's just like, let me just go with my ego here and just, just throw everything away. And I don't know why, but that's not what happened to me. It woke me up and a beautiful thing happened, like literally on that day when he said, you know, I've decided to leave you. We started talking. And I remember one of the first things that I said to him was, I finally understand and I release you. Like, you're free.
Oh.
Yeah. And he, so he burst into tears, and, you know, and that just got the conversation going. And, we weren't trying to save anything. We weren't, you know, we didn't have any agenda whatsoever, no expectations whatsoever, but we just began deep conversations every single day. And
so wait, he moving out at this point? Like, what's happening on that day? Now what?
I have to take a drink of water here with my
Yeah.
So I would say for the next 6 weeks, we were putting plans in place. So we made the announcement. We told my parents, we told his mom. His dad actually died about a week after that, which just, you know, made everything worse. But so we made the announcement. He started to look for an apartment. You know, he told his boss, and, you know, so we were putting all the plans in place. But at the same time, he had not moved out of the house yet. And back then we had 2 kids. I mean, we still have 2 kids, as you know, but they were 4 and 1. So they were so tiny. And so back then we thought, okay, let's take our time. Like, let's not, you know, I'm not going to like kick him out in the middle from one day to the next. You know, we want to make sure that we take our time, and like, we're cautious about this. And we wanted to think about like, how do we break the news and everything. So he didn't move out at first. He was home. And while we were putting plans in place, in our quote unquote free time, when we weren't working and when we weren't putting plans in place, we were just talking. And we were just talking about our feelings and our emotions and our experience. And he had then started therapy because he wanted to work through all kinds of junk, but then also realize like figure out, how did he get to this point of, you know, wanting to completely change his life. And so then he would go to therapy, and then he would come back home, and we would sit out with a bottle of wine and talk about his therapy session. And I'm super into psychology, so this was just fascinating for me. So I'm like, tell me more about your inner child. Tell me more about what's coming up for you. Oh my God, that's so fascinating. And oh God, and here's what I'm feeling. And no expectations whatsoever. Like, we had made the decision, you know. Wow. And out of that grew this unbelievable, deep friendship. Like, we were just, we had the deepest friendship all of a sudden, and we were supporting each other. And it's like, besides our therapist, we were the only people that we could really talk to about this, because we were the only ones who really understood. Because when we talked to other people, it was either, you know, that people's opinions were all over the place. And there were people, you know, on my side, people were telling me, you know, you've got to kick him out and, you know, pack his stuff up and put his suitcase to the curb. And, you know, and on his side, people were unbelievably angry with him, and, you know, were biting his head off about, how could you do this? And how could you let your family? And for him and I, there was compassion, and there was no ego. And there was just really talking about our experience, where we've been, how we got here, what went wrong, what we could have done better, and loving each other through that.
That's so, just to stop you on that point, I think there's something that happens when like a full release happens, because from what I hear you had said, like, it was kind of like you were the boss, you created this road that he had to follow along with you on. And, you know, this expectation that this is just how it's going to look for us. And so there was this expectation that, you know, I think we had talked last time about it, like expectations, those are not, we cannot have expectations. That nobody is actually supposed to have expectations. Now, of course, there's healthy boundaries, but an expectation of someone is different than, you know, he has to live up to this and he needs to follow along. And all of a sudden there's just this acceptance of release, where it's like, no expectations. This is just, we're just 2 people. And all of a sudden you begin this incredible free space of being able to connect, because there's nothing expected anymore.
Right.
It's just a beautiful, free just you be you, I be you. I feel like my husband and I the same thing. When we broke, that's when all the expectations went away.
Yeah.
And there is now a chance for that repair to come in, which you're talking about. I think that's just that repair is when release happens. When you release, that's when repair can happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
and no
anyway.
longer trying to control someone or mold them into what you need them to be. Because yeah, for me in that moment, it was, well, I've lost him. So
Yeah.
I don't need to make him be what I need him to be. He gets to just be himself. And then I realized over time, I think he realized quicker than me. But I realized over time, wow, he's becoming an amazing man. Like, it was almost like we grew from this sort of childlike relationship into an adult, mature relationship. And then we both went off. So we actually did not do couples therapy. We did individual therapy, both of us. And we had major transformation in individual therapy, because as these things usually go, it's that each person has their construction site, as you say in German. They call it your construction site. So he's got his issues that he needs to work on, or his old wounds. And I had my conditioning, and I grew up in a beautiful atmosphere with a super, super healthy home, with wonderful love. And a lot of times now as a mother, I think, how did my parents do it? Because they were always giving and calm and loving. And I found myself, like losing my shit a lot with my kids, and
can we get an amen in the chat?
Yeah. But no matter where you grow up, no matter what environment that you're in, you're going to have something that has conditioned you to bring junk into your marriage or things, and for me, it was this whole, I think a lot of it was also, I don't know, it was in society, but maybe it was from church, but it was a lot of the, this is how it needs to be. This is how it needs to look. And if you love me, this will happen. And so when we broke down, it was the release of none of that matters anymore, because I've lost him, and then it was just like, from the weeds, like, to not to get too philosophical, but that field of weeds, it was literally like all these flowers started to bloom.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that analogy. You just like weed whack the whole dang thing. Yeah. And now there's like that freedom for new growth to come, because it was too overgrown. There was no room for growth in that.
No.
I like the weed whacker thing.
Yeah.
Take the weed whacker. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Keep going. I just like that.
No,
analogy.
I mean, and then, like I said, we both enjoyed our therapy so much that we stayed in therapy for 2 years, each of us. And so, actually, and after about 6 months, our relationship was so strong and so solid and so amazing that neither one of us needed to talk about it in therapy anymore, but we stayed in therapy to work through. I mean, I remember talking about, what is it like to be a woman in society today, or what is it like to be a mother, or, all of just whatever's on your heart. And my husband did the same thing. And he worked through a lot of, issues that he had with his dad, and things that sort of died with his dad that were never resolved. And all of those things just strengthened our relationship more, because we continued that tradition of coming back together and talking through everything, and just being unbelievably curious, and practicing this like unconditional compassion for each other. And of course we still fought and we still fight, but we were able to put our egos aside and like look beneath the surface. Okay, what are you saying? And what's the underlying emotion? Like, what is it? What's your pain? Before, we had no idea how to do any of that. And so,
yeah. And I like that like, of course there's going to be exceptions, but generally the person that you're fighting against, they don't have a bad heart. Like they don't have ill intent generally. Now, yes, there's exceptions, but generally, if you can get through the ego side of things and filter through to like, are they really saying that to tick me off? Are they really saying that to get under my skin? Do they really have that bad of a heart that everything they're doing is to push my buttons? Or is it that I'm allowing my own junk to be stirred up and I'm unable to see that deep down their heart is good? They wouldn't do this on purpose. You start to see, as you said, that compassion piece of seeing your husband's heart. He sees yours without as we said, the expectations. You start to see, look, there's goodness in them. Why can't I get through? Generally, it's because it's our stuff.
Yeah. Not only is it our stuff, so it's just the work of beginning to understand yourself. What are your own triggers? What are your wounds? What are your fears? And then also understanding those of your partner. And so that when you're in a conflict situation, which it's going to come up, it's inevitable. You cannot not have conflict with your partner, but even if you might, I think I'm echoing.
I don't hear it, but
okay. You do?
Oh, echo? You are?
Okay. I don't know how to fix echoes. Okay.
Does anyone else hear? I don't hear it. I wonder.
Okay.
Type it in the chat if you can hear or if it's echoing.
Test. I think it's better. Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's better.
Hear you. Good. Okay.
So even if you have a conflict with your partner and you both explode and you lose it, and you can very quickly come back together and say, it was this for me again, or I know that I went to that place where I shouldn't have gone for you, and it's just that deep intimacy of knowing where I think you're going to talk about inner child later on today in the summit, but where is your partner's inner child triggered, and where is your inner child triggered, and just having compassion for that. And then, you can get out of ego a lot more quickly and resolve.
Yeah. So take us back. You're working through it was 6 months. So what happened?
Yeah. So we just, we sort of had this pact that nobody wanted him to move out. We never told our kids. We never told them. They still don't know today, which is just fascinating. I mean, my daughter was 1 year old, so she wouldn't have understood back then anyway, but our son doesn't know. And it's because we were just genuinely enjoying this dialogue that we were in and this connection. And so it's that whole piece that we were talking about of no expectations. Like, you would not believe the amount of people coming from us on the outside. When are you all going to make a decision? When is he going to move out? What's the update? It's like people all around us were so much more uncomfortable than we were.
Right.
The people just needed closure. They needed like the conclusion. They needed to know the last chapter. And we just kept saying, we're not ready. And then we would just, he would come home from work in the evening and we would put the kids to bed together. And then we would go in our cocoon, and for a year, we didn't turn the television on once. And we would just sit out under the stars with a bottle of wine and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and hug and be intimate and be together and just be friends. And I think it was about like 5 months of this going on when he said to me one day, I think we're going to build this back up. And I remember being really offended. Like, how can he just, he hasn't asked me if I want to build this back up. He hasn't asked me, if this is where it's going for me. So I just kind of dismissed that. And then we just, like I said, we were just living in our strange and odd bubble. Like, the outside world knew what was going on with us, and we didn't care. And we just were enjoying it and just like finding so much comfort in it too. And I remember it was in June, and we had a family vacation planned home to see my family in the States. And we were all 4 of us supposed to go. And he said to me, I'm wondering if it would be good for us if you went alone with the kids, and if I went off and like just toured through France. I want to go surfing and just had time to myself to just clear my head. And I said, that actually sounds really good. And so right before the trip, I said, because we had both taken our wedding rings off because it just felt right. And right before the trip, I said, back in the States, the only people that know about this are my parents. And so I'm going to put my wedding ring back on for the trip because I just don't feel prepared to answer questions. I'm not ready for that. And then he said to me, well, what do you think about just keeping it on? And then we had a moment. We're just standing right here in the living room. We're just standing here and we looked at each other. And then we just realized, oh, it might actually be an option to not throw this all away. And then we just hugged. And then I think he like turned on music and he's like, let's have a moment. And we danced and we decided, okay, we're not going to throw this away. We're going to stick this out. And that was our sort of coming back together moment. We both put our rings back on together. And then that's when the honeymoon started.
The next honeymoon.
Ooh, it was good times. We were so in love. It was like in the beginning, back in Paris, just, shooting with endorphins, just,
yes,
and it was just on this new level and this like deep friendship with this deep love and this rekindled love. And then we've got our 2 babies running around and we're this family and we adore each other and we can keep our hands off each other and we've made it, and so it's been an incredible journey since then. It's been 4 years now and we're still completely transformed. We have fights, we have terrible dates. We have, we get at each other's throats about things. We know how to trigger each other. We're a completely normal couple, but we also get on fire when people come into our lives who are struggling and we can help. So we just, a week ago, we had a couple over who are self-declared super fans of the Blue Letter Project, which is, which is my initiative to get this message out. And, and we just got into it, like the 4 of us at dinner and talking about the love languages and talking about how to meet each other's needs. And they're exactly in that spot where we were back then. They have 2 tiny little babies and they're so overstretched and so disconnected from each other, but know that they need more. And we just, it just lights me up to just get the conversation going and say, how do you feel? And this and that. And my husband said to me afterwards, he's like, it lights me up to watch you. Like, you're so, it's just such good stuff. So yeah, that's where the Blue Letter Project was born. It's just organically from helping so many couples and seeing everybody's telling me the same thing. Like we need to pull back the curtain. We've got to pull back the curtain.
It's so true. And I don't know, like marriage, it has to be intentional. Like if you don't give it time, it will end up in a bad place. Like you have to find that intentionality. And I loved how you said the honeymoon period, because, our marriage exploded at year 7 and, it was just a complete disaster. But finally we walked the same journey you guys did of individual healing. Like we were both on our own separate paths, which I remember we connected on that. You understood that. It was like, that's what we both had to go into, deep inner work to heal. Because yes, eventually we came together for therapy, but those 2 individual, I am a separate person. I have my own junk, just as you said, like that's my stuff. And I can't give from an empty place. I have to heal what's inside me in order to then serve. And if you are carrying junk, there's no freedom then to connect on the deep levels you're supposed to. You have too much junk still in there, Right. And I love that you said that about the individual journeys. If you have a relationship that you're not happy about, the only thing you can do is work on you. And yes, we pray the other person will do their work too. But the only thing you can do is work on your stuff. Yeah. Like that's going to eventually, hopefully we pray that both people do and they can come back together. But the piece that I see is you watched the journey, and now exactly what the theme is you have turned around and you're serving now. Like, It's like you walked this journey, other people need to hear it. And here you go now, serving and serving. Why do you think? Let's go deep into that. Why is marriage such a hard one for people to share? Where have we?
I don't want to blame it on the whole fairy tale thing, but it really does come back to the fairy tale thing. I mean, all we see in the movies and growing up and with Barbie and everything is that, you know, you're going to grow up and you're going to find your Prince Charming, and it's going to be, you know, there's going to be like
charming, and it's going to be, you know, there's going to be like
echoing again.
Echoing again.
No, when you started talking fast, that was it sounded like a cartoon for a second.
Better.
All right.
Better.
Okay, yeah, just like it glitches. Oh, now there's echo.
Maybe it's my microphone.
It's just like every now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you're fine again. Well, for me anyways. I'm not sure what's everyone else. Oh, echo, Naomi. Oh, it's good now.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're good now.
The fairy tale.
The fairy tale. And so we grow up with this idea, like there's going to be a lightning bolt come down, or like Cupid's going to, you know, send an arrow and like hit me in my butt. And then I'm going to, you know, have stars in my eyes, and then he's going to sweep me away, and we're going to live happily ever after. And so we have that image in our mind. And then the other piece is what I'm trying to do now, which is that no one talks about it. Nobody talks about it. Yes. You know, when you're a kid and you're growing up, like all you see is that, you know, all of your friends' parents are getting divorced, but you never know why. And yeah. And so no one talks about it. And then also this is a completely different project, and I don't know if I'll ever get to it. It's like one of those to-do things, but I would love to go into schools and teach emotional and relational intelligence to kids, because no one tells us how to do relationships or how to do romantic relationships. With any other relationship, you can just bolt if it's not working out. If you don't like your boss, you can leave your job. If you don't like a friend, you go find another friend. But in your romantic relationship, there's so much at stake. And especially if you have kids, like it needs to work, unless, you know, of course, there are many exceptions, you know, abuse, domestic violence, or, you know, emotional, verbal abuse. Of course, you know, that's different, but the everyday, like narking at each other, and it's all fixable, it's all movable, but no one ever talks about it. And so we don't have the tools. We just don't know how.
Yeah. And yeah, I like how you said that, like the fairy tale. So we unconsciously even have had potentially expectations of what the world sees, what marriage is. And then you experience what you experienced growing up, and you're like, those two don't really match. Now, so like, what is it supposed to be? If you haven't had it modeled good, you know, or if you have, but then if you fail at it, it's like such a huge shame piece almost. It's like, well, wow, like no one else, clearly everybody else has it together, and here we are behind closed doors, such a disaster. Like it's just exactly as you said, it's not talked about. So then there is that place of shame, and I'm such a failure, and no one else is. And it's like, but like for sure half, if not more, I would almost say it's got to be like 80 to 90% of marriages. Okay, 100% of them have struggles, but like the behind closed doors shame pieces, like we all carry those. And
absolutely. And with a romantic relationship, it's also this feeling of like, you know, if you start a new job and you fail, well, maybe that's not my calling and maybe that's not my talent. But a romantic relationship, it's like, I failed at just being loved, or I failed at loving. Like, how hard can this be? You know, like I'm a creature of love. We're all creatures of love. We come from God. How can we fail at loving? And how can we fail at being loved? Like, what can be so hard about it? But it's hard. And that's because the person that we're drawn to is meant to trigger things in us to help us grow, because we have to stay in a constant state of growth. We can't stay stagnant. We have to grow. And so your most intimate relationship, which is your spouse, not even your children, your most intimate relationship, your spouse, is there to trigger you to grow. And so that's hard. That is really hard. And if you can learn, and it is a skill, and it is very difficult, but if you can learn to understand what your ego is, it's this little thing inside of me, this little guy, gal who's trying to keep me safe, who's, you know, like sending me into fight or flight all the time. If you can learn to recognize that and set that aside, and then really focus in on, okay, what's going on here? What can I learn from this? What pain do I need to see under the surface with my spouse? Then you can really begin to grow with your spouse and, quote, make it.
Right. Yeah. Just seeing. Yeah, exactly, Naomi. We can't stay stagnant. We need to continue to grow. Yeah, I hate that part about the fact that like we have our spouse and they're supposed to trigger you because you don't want to stay like that. You're like, I don't believe it's not by accident that God allows you to get on each other's nerves. You're supposed to work on your stuff triggered because God wants you healed. God wants you whole. And so it's like those lessons are coming at you to trigger your unworthiness or feeling unseen or feeling unloved. And it's like, that's all there as a potential for growth. If you can see the perspective of it, like you said, that's so beautiful. Yeah. Well, it's beautiful and it's freaking hard.
It's hard. And it always will be hard, you know?
Yeah.
But once you sort of just change your awareness, it's not as hard because then you know what's happening in the moment and you get excited you get curious and get excited about the growth.
Yes. And yeah, I don't know if it ever gets easier. Like, you know, God has allowed that restoration to happen, but it's never easy when you like, you know, that root is getting ripped out and it's the stubborn ones that are like, just like way down deep. And it takes like almost two of you to pull it out. And
but I feel like once you've been at total rock bottom and you've restored and come back together and grown together, it just feels a lot safer.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like when there's conflict and when there's growth moments, it feels hard as hell, but it feels safe.
Right. Because now you've seen each other's hearts and you know you're not there to like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that safe space. I like that. It's interesting that sometimes it takes that complete devastation first to get to the place of safety. Like you were first had to hit that rock bottom in order to now build this new foundation. And all of a sudden now there's that place of safety that's there. Cause
I hesitate to say this sometimes because I don't want to sound arrogant, but a lot of times I think of us as the lucky ones because, not just in the sense of the lucky ones because we ended up restoring our marriage and staying together, but lucky that we went through this experience because the majority of people either go through this experience and split and don't come back together. And then, you know, they might have a lifetime of going back and forth with the kids and just kind of struggles and hassles and heartache and pain, which is not everyone's experience. I mean, of course, you know, you can absolutely have a happy separation and uncoupling, but what most people do is they just stay in complacency and it's like a slow simmer under the surface.
Yeah.
And it never really bubbles up. And so you know, my mom actually said to me one time, and I put it in a post because it was so good, but you know, you're not meant to have a mediocre marriage.
Right.
That's not what God wants for us. He wants us to have an amazing marriage. And the only way we can really have that is to let things bubble up and then to look at them and to get curious and to grow.
Get curious. I like that. Become curious first within and then with your spouse. Get curious. What is this triggering? What is this causing pain? Exploration of it, right? Yeah. I like that. It's not meant to be mediocre. Why do we settle, right? Like there's so much there. And I identify in the intimacy, right? Because just coming from trauma and sexual brokenness, I believed the lie that I would never get to have fun, like intimately because of triggers. And so I just was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess this is just going to be the part of my marriage I'm never going to see freedom in, you know? It's like, that's not God's design. He has healing there for us. He has ways of getting us through to the other sides of things. It's just, are we curious enough and open enough to go down the exploration path of what does that look like, you know? Right. Thriving marriage is possible even after all the devastation. You guys are a testimony to that. Like,
absolutely. And it's totally next level. Like it's way happier than it ever was. Yeah.
I like your little getaways because you guys, was it like, how do you, okay, yeah, let's talk about that. How do you now protect
Okay.
your time? We have little kids. How do you guys protect yours?
I'll talk about two things. The first thing is the getaways. So we have what we call the 24-hour getaway, and we pick a spot that only takes maybe an hour to get to from where we live. And we did this recently. So we live pretty close to the Dutch border, so it's easy to go to Holland. And of course, when you cross over into a different country, it feels like super exotic, right? Like you've got a different language, everything looks different. The houses are so cute, like little gingerbread houses. So we did the 24-hour getaway. We took the kids to grandma. We left at 12 p.m. on a Saturday, drove 1 hour to this hotel, which was in an old monastery. And it was the most beautifully decorated hotel I've ever seen, out in the middle of the Dutch countryside, nothing around. We checked in, we went to our hotel room, kicked things off with some amazing intimacy, got in the bathtub together. Then we went down, had some wonderful appetizers, like looking out at the Dutch countryside. Then we went for a walk in town and popped into the shops. Then we came back, had some more intimacy in the room. Then we popped open our champagne in the room. And then we emptied the entire mini bar. Then we went down and had a 4-course dinner with wine. And then, slept in, had wonderful, sleep. And then the next morning went on a walk through the woods of the countryside, like a 2-hour walk, came back, had a beautiful breakfast spread, and drove back home. And we were back home at 12 p.m. So from 12 to 12. And we were just like floating on cloud nine, because it's this enormous relationship boost, and you're able to pack so much into 24 hours. So people think like, I can do a date night, but then I got to get a babysitter and really then you got to come home and then still there's the echo again. The kids might wake up in the middle of the night and it's not the same. But if we want to go away overnight, we've got to make like a huge thing out of it. Like we need to go really far away and get on an airplane and fly to the beach. No, you don't. You can take 24 hours, make it a little window, go somewhere nearby, pack as much in as you can. Or we've had vacations where we drove 3 hours away to Hamburg, Germany, and stayed in the hotel room the whole time. Emptied the mini bar, had a huge bathtub, stayed in the bathtub the whole time, drank champagne, and did nothing else, which is also amazing. Just getting out of your routine. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the love languages. I'm a huge promoter of the love languages, which is a concept by Gary Chapman, an American psychologist. If you haven't read the book, grab it. There's also the 5 love languages for children, and the 5 love languages for your relationship with God, how God speaks your love language. So the 5 love languages are, I can feel my voice going out.
Reach the limit.
The 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, gifts, and acts of service. And the idea is just that each one of us expresses and understands love in one of those 5 love languages. And so once you understand what your love language is, you can start to speak up for what you need. You can also start to understand your own reactions. I feel like the love languages apply to every area of your life. Like you can see why it's escalating in conflict. You can see why you feel lonely. You can see why intimacy isn't working, why things are dull in the bedroom, and why there's no connection with your spouse. And then once you understand your partner's love language, you can begin to consciously express love to your partner in their love language. And the thing is, most of us express love in our own love language, so it just never lands. And this concept alone is revolutionary. If you adjusted for the holidays, I did a 14-day love language holiday challenge, and it was an email challenge. So the participants got an email every day for 14 days, and it had one idea for each of the love languages. And the challenge was to take your partner's love language and go implement that idea that day. And then after 14 days, the concept was your nest will be warmed up for the holidays. And so I've
I love
gotten
it.
amazing feedback. Um,
Yeah.
and people just saying like, this just opened my eyes and just gave me so much awareness of the things that I can do, because I made sure to have like really creative ideas. Like, don't tell your partner you love them. Tell your partner something specific that they do well, and say it in front of other people. Like,
Oh,
words of affirmation is my language. And if Alex says in front of other people, you wouldn't believe how amazing Cindy is at coaching couples. She has this knack, and I mean, I'm just like soaring on cloud nine.
you now.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah. So that's also the free gift that I'm offering. I don't know if you're ready for me to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That
I'm
leads right in.
offering the free gift, the challenge that I did. I've packaged everything into a neat little PDF, and it's called Loving with Intention: Transform Your Relationship in 10 Days. And so there's a PDF with 10 days of one idea for each love language. So if you don't know what your partner's love language is, you can have them take the quiz. Inside that free gift is also the link to go take the quiz. You can take it yourself or have your partner take it. And then once you know, okay, my partner's language is acts of service, then you can just, for 10 days, pick the idea for acts of service, implement it. And the idea with the challenge too is that they start off really, really subtly, so that your partner doesn't think, hang on, what's going on here? You're suddenly like bringing me 7 dozen roses. No, it starts out really subtly, especially the physical touch one, because a lot of women, especially if there's a disconnect in the marriage, they feel sort of icky around physical touch. And so it starts out like really, really subtly, and then it works its way up. Yeah.
I love that. That's so creative. So many people need it. Learning that, and you can take that into all areas. Once you learn about that, you see perhaps where woundedness came in from your childhood, because you didn't receive what you needed for your talk. It's like talking in 2 different languages. Like that's such a simple way, right? It's like, if I was told I love you in Spanish my whole life, and I don't know, but someone has told me I love you, I love you, I love you. They've spoken in Spanish the whole time. I'm like, they never told me they love me. It's like, well, no, they have, but your reality is you only know English, and that's the only language. So it's such a cool, once you learn it, if you haven't, I'm really excited for you guys to get this gift from Cynthia. That again, everything's getting packaged and sent to everybody, which is just, I'm
Awesome.
so excited for that, for everybody. That's you guys will all be emailed at the end. I think I already packaged it, so it's coming out, I think around 2 or something my time. So it should be coming out in a while, but it's pretty, amazing. Guys, what did you pull from Cynthia? Like, she is just, I just absolutely adore you and your passion to speak life into marriages, being willing to share from your heart, and gifting people knowledge of how to speak those languages to each other. I think you're on direct message, Mom. But she says, love your 24-hour getaway idea. She's an inspiration. Can you see the chat? Love the 10-day challenge. Definitely do something. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
That one's from Ellery. She's one of the members in my group, and she took part in the challenge, so she knows what I'm talking about.
I think, and it would be cool to do it together too, like get you and your spouse, see who can outdo the other.
Yeah. It's also fun to do with girlfriends. Like I was doing it with a girlfriend who her husband had no idea. And we were like coming back and forth, and she told me, I don't know how much time I have left, but she told me that there was one day. So her husband is a fashion designer, and he's a pretty big deal, and he's building this business, and he's been gone all the time lately, and they have 2 tiny little kids, and she's finding herself starting to feel really resentful and like hostile towards him because she's just overstretched,
Yeah.
And so there was one night where he didn't show up for her again in some way. And the thing is, she knows his intention. She knows that this is his love language. His is service. And he thinks, I'm providing for my family. Like I'm pouring everything into the business so that I can build this beautiful life for my family. And hers is time. And so she needs him home, and she wants him near her. And so she knows his intention. And so she decided the night when she was feeling super hostile, instead of snapping at him when she got home, she decided to pick three things from the challenge. And so she laid out a fresh towel with a candle in the bathroom for when he got home to take a shower. She put a note. So that's acts of service. Then she put a note on top, which is either words or gifts. And on the note, it said, I know you've been working so hard for our family. I see you, and home is better when you're here. And then, so the next day, after he saw that, again, he's been so disconnected. She's been pulling the load fully on her own. So the next morning he came up behind her, put his arms around her and said, I just had an awareness of how much of the load you've been pulling. And thank you so much for all that you're doing. And then he gave her a back rub. That's physical touch. And then where he would usually go crash on the couch while she cleaned up the kitchen, he pulled up a chair and said, tell me about your day. And so that's quality time. And she said she was just floating on cloud nine. She just felt so filled up with love because he showed up for her.
Yeah, spoke her languages. And she did too. Well, Cynthia, thank you. Your time is so valuable, a treasure that you've gifted us with that today. And I really pray and hope that you feel better very soon. And thank you for blessing. I know that you've been a blessing to speak, and this will continue as people watch the recordings. And so sending you off with all my love. Let's give her the love in the chat because she can see it, guys. So give her that love as she heads out for the rest of your day. Are you going to take some time, or are you just going to now be...
I'm going to give my family permission to now come home.
Okay.
And then I'm going to snuggle them and have some good dinner.
Good. There we go.
And Sarah, Sarah, thank you for all of the love that you're bringing in the world. Same back to you.
Thank you. We are here to serve. All right. I'm going to unpin you.
Thanks for listening.
Okay. Unpin. There we go. Oh, wow. I'm just... Everybody is incredible. What's one thing that stuck out for